Welcome to another episode of Student of the Game podcast. Today is special. Not many people have been on this podcast that I've actually known a really, really long time, but have gotten to know much better as an adult here recently. So, my man Chris Myers, welcome to the pod.
Hey, what's going on, man? I'm here.
You are here.
I
So,
have
for those of
arrived.
you, you've arrived. Long time listener, first time guest.
Absolutely.
So I'll say this, and I'm just going to spill the tea early on. So Chris and I met a week ago, and Chris has some big goals, and we're going to talk about transitions. We're going to talk about this episode is going to be about answering the call. If you have something in your life that just kind of keeps tugging at you, it's nagging. There's something in the back of your mind that's like, hey, I got some more gas in the tank. I need to answer that. That's what we're going to talk about today. But I'll spill the tea and say, Chris has 10 goals, and one of them was to be on this podcast, and he's got an amazing story that I think is going to bless a lot of people. So I just told him, I said, that's not a goal, that's a to-do. Let's just check this off and get it done. And people need to hear this story. So Chris, welcome to the podcast. Answering the call. Before we get into answering the call, why don't you just share with the listeners a little bit about your background and how you got to this place of a big transition in your life that we're going to talk to.
All right. So, hi, I'm Chris. I am Texas born, Indiana raised. So I come from the same place that Brad comes from, Burn, Indiana. So, also shout out to Michael Yoder, other podcast alumni here. So we're connecting all the way through here. Uh, you know, Went to school there, went to college abroad a little bit. I wouldn't say abroad necessarily. I kind of just hopped over the state line and did some time over there at Bluffton University. Played some basketball over there. Played some basketball in high school, of course, too. Tried to get over the Doug Noll scoring mark there, but didn't quite get there. So yeah, but we all have dreams.
There's this new thing in basketball called passing. So I don't think anybody's going to get there. That one.
I heard about it, but I didn't really listen to it either. I just didn't hear it as less as he did. So,
Right.
but yeah, so transferred over to IPFW, finished my degree in psychology. Did not necessarily want to be a consultant or a clinical psychologist. I wanted to be a good psychologist that also did advertising and marketing, with the idea of kind of perpetuating my grandfather's wishes, my grandfather's teaching from me, which is it doesn't matter if you're the guy sweeping the streets or you're the president of the United States. We've all got to help each other because we're just people. And from that, I took a servant's attitude in a lot of different things that I had done career wise. And it took me on a lot of different journeys, a lot of different twists and turns. But the last place that I was at before I embarked on this new career was at Hallmark Home Mortgage, doing marketing, video advertising, social marketing, that kind of thing, helping to tell people stories, and helping to increase visibility for businesses. I think that was really important for us. Had a great time doing it, but I always felt like there was a higher calling for me, that I wasn't helping in the capacity that I knew that I could. And so that kind of was what brought me to this different career change here, is that I was given the opportunity to not just go where my grandfather had asked me to go, but then go beyond that. So
Mm.
that was the biggest reason for making this leap. And it's been, it was a scary time, but it's just part of it. Big change is sometimes uncomfortable.
Well, let's get into that a little bit. One of the things that you and I have really kind of connected on is, how influential our grandfathers were in our journey. And one of the things that I share a lot is, when I was getting into real estate, I had multiple people tell me no, like, do not do this. Like, it is a bad career. Like, you're gone every night, you're gone on the weekends, you won't have a family life, and it's like there's got to be a better way to do this. And I hope you have somebody in your life, the listener. I hope you have somebody in your life like I did with my grandfather and Chris did with his. But I remember calling my grandfather at 55 years of real estate experience. And I haven't even graduated college yet. And I said, Grandpa, what do you think about me getting into real estate? And he's like, you'd be amazing. You'd be awesome. Go for it. I didn't even know how you got paid in real estate. I didn't even know how to do real estate. And he's telling me I'm going to be amazing. If that doesn't teach you a lesson right now, if you have kids or if you're mentoring somebody, just to affirm the gifts that somebody has inside of them, I'm telling you, like, I don't know a better motivational seminar. I don't know a better person to have in your life as somebody that affirms you. for who you are and sees potential in you. So, Chris, let's talk about your story. So you're a phenomenal storyteller. There's a couple people in my life, probably less than five, that I can count, that they just tell amazing stories. Like you just they grip you. They tell amazing stories. And I think for the longest time, where you are like a lot of the listeners here, is you've been telling stories, and you've been really good at telling stories. And now it's time to rewrite your story.
Yeah. Yeah, it
And
is.
now it's time to have confidence in the fact of, hey, I was a good storyteller for other businesses. I'm rewriting my own story now. How much belief and confidence do I have in myself? And I think that's really where we're going to go here when we talk about answering this call. But back to our grandfathers, you have some really cool stories about your grandfather. Why don't you share a little bit? I think that's a pivotal moment in your life when you lean into something you already knew.
Yeah, yeah. So I was actually just talking with you before the pod started about how I didn't know that I was made for this career until I knew that I was made for this career. And one of the reasons why that actually came to be is, so let's just go ahead and put all the cards on the table here. My grandfather's Larry Simon. He was an electrician in Bern, Indiana for 40, 50 years probably. There was a time where he was supposed to have retired and then he continued to work. So like he just didn't know how to not work and not serve people, not help. So one of the things that happened when we lost him about 5 years ago is that you start thinking back about the times you spent with the person, right? That happens with anybody. And some of the memories that always would come back for me were spending time in his hammock at our lake house. We had a lake house up on Dallas Lake, up northern Indiana, and it was just fantastic. I remember as a kid being there, just sitting in the hammock with him for hours in the summer, just talking, just about life, sports, anything. And you think back to that, and you also think back to, at least what I did, was to the fact that he was also very comfortable doing that and also very comfortable going very fast in boats. So he would have these boats there at the lake house that, so for instance, he had one that was called Sassy. Okay. So Sassy was maybe a 16-foot boat that was very short, very small hull, and had a 427 Cobra engine on it, which for anybody that doesn't know, that is a very, very fast engine. And he would do these drag boat races, and he was doing 112 on the water, which he told me one day that 100 sorry, he told me one day that 100 miles per hour on the water is just like breaking the speed barrier, or sorry, the sound barrier on land. So in order to, let me start that over.
Start over.
He told me that 100 miles an hour in the water was just like breaking the speed of sound on land, which is insane to think about the kind of power that it takes for that. But he was totally comfortable doing that. And as you think back on the life that you had with somebody, especially somebody like that, you wonder, how was he so comfortable doing these things? And how was he just so nonchalant about it? Because he was doing 112 that day in Salamone when he hit a wave and it took the boat into the water. Like it just dove it. And we just thought we lost him. And as tough as that guy was, he got out of the water, he fished the thing out, he rebuilt the engine, and he kept going. And thinking back on that, I was like, how is this guy able to do this? And it didn't hit me until I started going into this career where I realized that it was because of the good decisions that he made in the past. He was so nonchalant and confident and comfortable making those decisions in the future because he knew that if anything happened to him, first of all, he'd be in a position to take care of everybody he cared about. And
Mm.
second of all, through his good decisions, he was going to be able to provide for us a life that we were going to enjoy. And so that was such an eye-opening moment to me when I was first interviewing for this new career, is that, holy cow, like that's what I want. Like first and foremost, I want that for me. Like I want that because I have children of my own now too. And one of my children is autistic, and his life path is going to be altered because of that diagnosis. And as anybody thinks that they'll die for their children, and rightfully so, right? With Joseph, I thought I was going to have to live forever to make sure that he was going to be okay because I didn't know what would happen to him after I was gone. One of the things that I learned early on when I started pursuing this career is that there are things that I can do today that will continue to take care of him when I'm not around to do so. So that was one of the biggest things. And for him to have that feeling, I want that for myself, but I also want that for other people. So I want to bring that comfortability. I want to bring that nonchalantness and almost like an arrogance at times where like, hey, I can do whatever I want because I don't have to worry about whether or not I can do it. Like those are the things that I really resonated with when I was first interviewing for this career and what ultimately led me to pursuing it because as daunting as it seemed to get into it, the reward for it was so much greater than anything I could have done, where I was currently at.
How old were you when the boat accident took place?
Oh man, I think I was like 12.
Wow.
So we were young. I might be a little bit older as I'm 41 now. Time seems to slip away.
You're
So
young. You're a young pup. 41.
yeah, I know. I don't look it in the beard, but I am. I am.
Well,
But yeah,
listen, listeners, check this out, right? So something happened when you were, a youthful boy, young man, you know, between 10 and 15 years old, there was a life experience that happened to you that is now going to change your family tree.
yep.
Like,
And I
like
had
that,
no idea.
and so it's like, I think about a lot of stuff, right? And I think about, I'll give you the first thing that comes up in my mind right now is like the only way grapes turn into wine is they have to be crushed. The only way something can become something better is to go through some type of adversity, right? And we've
Without
all been there. And this moment in time where you look at your grandfather as this iconic figure, now he's starting to become reckless and you're like, what's happening? And it wasn't necessarily being reckless. It was saying, hey, I've done a great job of taking care of my family. I don't want to die, but I also want to live. And
yeah.
I wanna live a life that I'm proud of, and I wanna take care of people along the way. We do real estate, right? And we say, the people we wanna be introduced to are people going through lifestyle changes. If you're going through a lifestyle change and whatever that may be, you may be tired of renting, you may be, empty nesting and the kids are gone. There's death, divorce, and delinquency, and we deal a lot with that. And we have to come alongside people as a real estate advisor and advise them on how to set their life up. And, as Chris transitions into becoming a financial advisor and, working through meeting with people, it's like financial advisors, realtors, accountants, when you're talking about money, it's not always about, I just got a promotion, I made more money. What do I do with everything? I just hit the lottery. Like that's not the majority of the conversations. Right. And so let's talk and let's dive a little deeper into your 12-year-old boy. This thing happens in your life and you've lived some years past that. Why now? Why now all of a sudden do you answer this calling? And why now all of a sudden does this thing that happened to you at 12 become a teaching moment? Why wasn't it a teaching moment at 22? Why wasn't it a teaching moment at 31? Why 41 is it the teaching moment that now you're answering this call?
The short answer is because of actually a line I heard in the movie once, and you'll find that talking with me, I've got a lot of references that I make, names that I supply, whatever. They're not name drops; they're just references to people who have done it better than I have in the past. So the movie line that I heard was, "The faster and the harder you try to run away from the truth, the more tired you're going to be once it finally catches up to you."
Hmm.
And that's why it wasn't a lesson at 22. That's why it wasn't a lesson at 31 because I was still running away from what I believed deep down was going to be beneficial for me. I was always told that I would be a very, very effective communicator when it came to situations like sales like positions.
Hmm.
I always ran away from that because my response would always be, I hate salesmen. Like I hate them. Like I can never be one. I hate them. But the older I got and the more effective of a communicator I became, the more I realized that I'm not a salesman. I am and even consultant is not the right word for it. But what I'm doing is I'm helping facilitate people to be in a better position through the services that I can offer to help take care of themselves and take care of their families. And I didn't realize that honestly until I started really diving into this career because I didn't want to admit to it. So that's
Hmm.
really kind of why it wasn't a life lesson back then. I just thought, holy cow, I almost lost my grandfather. Like, slow down. Like, we need you here, man. Like, what are you
Yeah.
doing? So
Well,
that's all really what it does.
this is a student of the game podcast, and I don't want to make cheeky references here, but one of the quotes that I just absolutely love because I think it's true. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. When the
Absolutely.
student is ready, the teacher will appear. And for you being a student of this game, the game is the game of life. and we all go through different seasons, right? Like I was ready to hear a lesson when I was 25 that's not the same lesson as today and 35 and 40 and so on and so forth. And so I think answering that call means, am I ready? And we talk a lot about preparation. We talk a lot about, mastering the fundamentals here. There's a lot of things that can come out of this conversation today. Answering the call, there's a lot to it. But let's talk about the fundamentals of when you have to dig deep down inside, and when the listener here, when you have a decision you have to make and dig deep down inside, what are some of the fundamentals that you can count on in really stretching yourself?
Yeah, there's a few things that really stand out, and a lot of it have come through sports. Uh, so one of my old coaches, he always used to say, like, it doesn't matter, just do it. Like literally, that was it. Like it doesn't matter if you want to do it or not, just do it. And that kind of is a hard truth sometimes, because there are times when, man, there are so many things going on and life gets in the way and all these things happen, but it doesn't matter. Like the job is the job, you know?
Yeah.
And I remember a quote from Kobe, it was like, hey, like I signed that contract with myself. There's no going back on it. And those are some of the things that I try to adopt as a fundamental for myself, is just that consistent push. It doesn't matter if I'm tired. It doesn't matter if I'm, not feeling it today. It doesn't matter if I just got kicked in yesterday from my calls and whatever else, and I'm not doing what I thought I should be doing. It doesn't matter. Like, and then, again, I go back to Kobe because my gosh, that guy had so many good things to say. But like, if you do the right thing and things work out and you win, great. Got to wake up the next morning and do the same thing over again. Conversely, if you don't, if you fall short, if you lose, sucks, but you're gonna have to get up in the next morning and do it all over again the same way, anyways. So it's consistency. And then another thing that I really think is a fundamental for myself is what's called the Stockdale paradox. Have you ever heard of this?
Oh, enlighten me. I've
All
I've
right.
heard of
All right.
this. I've
All
heard of
right.
this.
Student of
Let's
the
go.
game. Here we go. Now
Let's
I'm on the
go.
other side.
Yes.
So in the book Good to Great, they tell a
Yep.
story about I think he was a general or a major or something in the Vietnam War. His name was Mr. Stockdale. We'll call him Mr. Stockdale because I don't know his proper military designation there. Please, if you're listening to the podcast, please correct me. I'd appreciate it. Um, but they were captured. They were taken to a prison camp, and almost everybody around him ended up dying by the end of it, because the people that didn't make it were like, okay, if we can just get to Easter, if we can just get to Christmas, if we can just get to this moment in time. And then that moment of time came and then went. There was no rescue, and they lost all hope and despair, and then they ended up passing away and dying. And so the Stockdale paradox essentially is, you face the worst parts of the reality facing you, but you also couple that with an unwavering belief that you can and will succeed. And that's what I do. I know that throughout my life and the trials that I've faced and the difficulties that have come to me, and there's a lot of them. We can do a whole podcast episode on how I got to this point, but I've faced them head on, known and called them what they are, and then also realized in the depths of my soul that I have what it takes to beat this thing, and I will beat this thing, and I'm going to have a good time doing it, and I'm going to look back at it, and I'm going to be thankful for the lesson.
Hmm. Wow. I heard a couple things, but your story is special and unique to you. I don't think it's unique to everybody else because we all have a very similar story. I just shared on a recent pod that a setback is a setup for a comeback. If you
Nice.
believe that a setback is a setup for a comeback, if you look at any movie, I don't care what it is, the hero has to go through something. The most boring movie out there would be like, oh, okay, you know, this guy has his goal and then he, has a cat and he goes to work and, he hits his goal and then everybody cheers. It's like, how boring is that?
Just wins after one
Yeah,
after the
win,
other.
just win,
All
just
win.
win,
Yeah.
got the girlfriend, got the house, like just boring.
Yeah.
All great movies, the hero has to have some setback. And so my question to you, the listeners, like what setback in your life can you use as fuel to keep you moving forward? And I think where you're answering this call, and the fundamentals that I heard, by the way, are action. You got to take action. You can't sit on the sidelines, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You
Get
cannot
off, get off the bench.
watch.
Get off the
Yep.
bench. You're not waiting for the bus.
Nope.
You take action with consistency and have an unwavering belief. Consistency, action, and an unwavering belief. And that's fundamental. What I love about this, what I'm addicted to, honestly, is when people can talk fundamentals with me. When you can talk fundamentals, because strategies and tactics change. How I go about doing something might change, but the reason or the foundational principles will never change. Taking action, even if it's the wrong action, you're going to get closer to your goal by taking action. You're not going to get closer to your goal by taking action for one day. You got to do it consistently. On the days you don't feel like it, you got to do it. I had somebody, it was a well-known college basketball player I got to know working basketball camps, and we would take turns speaking in front of some youth camps. And it was, we were off to the side and we were shooting around one day, and he just looked at me and he's like, Brad, listen. He's like, the thing that the kids don't understand is this. I only felt good about 30% of the time.
Wow.
If you only play, if you only get in the game on the days you feel good, it's only going to be about 30% of the time. If you think about that, right? We all have life going on. We all have something that's nagging at us, that's taking up space in our mind, that if we only excelled and did our best and showed up on the days we felt good, it'd probably be about 30% of the time. And if you don't lie to yourself, maybe it's 50% of the time. Like if you're feeling great, maybe it's 10% of the time. But the reality is the people who show up consistently will win. And you'll win if you show up consistently. Then you got to have belief. You got to have belief that when you don't see something, see progress, see success, right? It's like if you don't see it right away, you got to keep showing up. You got to keep believing. I love that. Let's get into falling in love with practice. So switching careers, so you went from being a storyteller to now you're advising people with their finances, and you're switching careers. So the conversation is not about being a financial advisor. The conversation is not about being a storyteller. The conversation is what happens when you had to answer that call. Switching careers is a significant life decision. And if I could just interject for a little bit, and I'm talking about you, I think it speaks volumes about a person's courage, adaptability, and honestly, just pursuit of fulfillment, pursuit of passion. Um, Pursuit of purpose. Pursuit of purpose. I think there's a psychologist, Viktor Frankl and Sigmund Freud, and Sigmund Freud always talked about like man seeks pleasure. That's what human beings seek is pleasure. And if we're honest with ourselves, there's a lot of pleasure that we all seek. It could be distractions. It could be good pleasures, bad pleasures. Doesn't matter. Viktor Frankl came in and he said, I don't disagree with you. I think people do seek pleasure. He goes, however, I think people ultimately seek purpose. And when there's no purpose in your life, you revert back to pleasure. And I have to tend to agree with that. I have to agree that this transition in your life is probably about you seeking, more purpose in your life, more purpose for you, more purpose for your family. Let's talk about answering that call. Talk about some of those moments, and talk about like what are you going to do with this now? Like you've got a responsibility, like right? Like you've made the decision, you burn the ships. Okay, Cortez, that
Yep.
talk about military stuff. Cortez burned the ships. What are you going to do now?
Yep.
What does that
So
look
yeah,
like?
that's always the
And
million dollar question, right?
yeah, and don't do this lightly. Like, don't be like, "Oh, it's gonna be great. I'm gonna meet new people." Like, get dirty, man. Like, okay, there's fear and doubt that creeps
This
in.
is going to
There's
be insane.
overcoming
Uh,
fear and doubt, inner stirrings, like self
yeah,
reflection. Like,
yeah.
talk about that transition.
That is the crux of it, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
so even when I was getting ready to leave my old job, I would I was telling people that I was going, and they were like, "Oh, well, that's tough. Oh boy, you might go, without pay, and you might, do that. It's going to be a struggle. It's a hard industry." I don't want to hear that. Like, hey, thank you for the input, but at the other side of it, like, can you just accept that maybe I just don't want to do the same thing forever? There was something that I saw a while back that, a guy was talking to a psychologist and he was frustrated because he didn't know what to do with his life yet. And the psychologist looked at him and said, maybe that's just who you are. Somebody who can consistently reinvent themselves and be fluid and be able to overcome no matter what it is. And that to me just kind of shook me because like, whoa, that is kind of me. Like, thank you very much, Instagram algorithm. You really figured it out for me.
uh,
But no, so going back to the question though, it is a grind, and that's part of it because you know, that's what the dream is, right? The dream isn't like the success that follows. And, it isn't, hey, I've got this fancy new place, or I've got brand new floors, or I've got whatever else. That's not the dream. The dream is the grind. The dream is, and this is what I told my wife from the very jump when I was even considering making this career change, because I have to run everything through her, obviously, because I gotta see her at the end of the day.
Mhm.
No matter what I do, I'm gonna have to answer to her. And I told her, I said, hey, listen, like this is going to be a grind. Like I don't know that I've ever done anything like this before where I've genuinely pushed myself and given myself 100% of everything that I've got. And that's what it's going to take. It's going to take that for X amount of months, or maybe even a couple years, until we get to where this ball is rolling. Like this is going to take a lot of primer until it's rolling. And once it's rolling, we're going to be okay. But I need to make sure that we set the expectations early. So that's part of the practice. It's continuing to make practice harder than the game, right? So you want to make sure that what you're doing to prepare yourself for that success you'll see later on is more difficult than what it looks like, to everybody else. And a lot of that too is self affirmations. So just to give you a little bit of insight onto who I am, I was a very gifted individual growing up, but always had that self-deprecating attitude where it's like, yeah, but I don't really deserve any of this stuff. That's not for me. I don't belong here. Like even stepping up into this podcast, Brad, like I didn't know that I really belonged here. I felt like you were going to introduce me like, all right, so we've had Theo Smith, who is a nationwide and international wide, known artist. We have Chantel Smith here that she owns a sports agency, and she's making career impacts for people all over the country. You've had Olympians on here, Brad. You've had Olympians on your podcast. I felt like you're going to be like, yeah, this is some guy that I know, and he's going to talk for a while. So, but it's that self affirmation. Like so, every year, like you said earlier, I have goals, and I also have a word of the year. Which thank you very much for that, because I grabbed that from you. And my word this year is believe. And not belief, it's believe. It's an active word. It's a very transitive verb that, like, I think I said that right. If I didn't, I'm sorry, English teachers. But it's an active engagement in believing that I belong here in these places, and I am the person that everybody hoped that I would be, and I am that person that is going to have a struggle and going to get through it, and I'm going to be on the other side of that. So affirmations, consistently putting in the work to make practice harder than the games. And then I would say, honestly, being a student is the biggest thing. So I am a searcher. I'm always searching for information, like input. I'm like Johnny Five, like input. I want input. But I'm very Socratic in my approach to that. So if you know anything about Socrates, or if you're a fan of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, Socrates, uh, Socrates basically said, like, true knowledge comes from knowing that you know nothing. And that creates within you, I interpret that as that it creates within you a need and a desire to continue to learn, because you understand that you don't know anything. And so you want to learn more. And so that's what I do as well. I'm always looking for the next thing to help enrich myself and insulate myself from being in a position where I think I know everything. Because if we
Mhm.
get bored, going back to Mr. Frankl here, if you don't have purpose, you seek pleasure. And I don't want to do that. And I can't do that. And I'm not here to just sit here and survive. I'm not here to sit here and just get through it. I'm here to knock this thing out of the park. And that's what I told my wife when I first started taking this career step, is that this is going to be scary, and this is a jump. But that's the exact time you should jump, is that when it looks scary to do so, because if you don't, you're going to stay right there. And that's another movie quote, but hey, whatever. It feels good.
I
It feels
I appreciate those movie quotes, but you're right. I mean, it goes back to purpose, and it goes back to falling in love with practice, like we talk about. It goes back to, some of the things that I try to even instill in my kids and our team, and obviously myself, is set goals not for what you get, but set goals for who you become. And I think, because here's the thing: when you get something, when you achieve something, there's another day. There's another day after that where you got to show up and do it all over again. But if I set a goal to become something, that stays with me for the rest of my life. We talk about these word of the years that we've been doing for, 7, 8, 9 years. And my word of the year in 2018 or 19 or 2020, like that still kind of carries over every single year because I have to embody that person. I love when you talk about like the action of believe, and like it's constant, like it's ing, it's ing. Like there's balancing. My life is not in balance, but I'm balancing. I'm working on that every single day. And there's a lot to be excited about into the future. I mean, if you believe that today you begin a new life, like every single day, this is my affirmation. Today I begin a new life. And what that means for me is no matter what happened yesterday, I can't control what's going to happen tomorrow. But today is the day I get to start this. The belief that I have in myself, the action that I'm taking, the consistency that I'm taking. That starts to You start to do some reps that builds confidence in yourself. And now you're showing up and now you're self-aware. And I think self-awareness is one of the greatest wonders of the world is, you talked about curiosity. You talked about being a constant learner. Let's unpack this for a little bit. Grow constantly is one of our core values. One of our core values at Knoll Team Real Estate is grow constantly. And I believe this is one of the hardest core values for our team to adopt. And it's because of this. If we say grow constantly, some people hear that as, okay, I'm growth minded. I'm going to set a goal. I'm going to grow. Most people hear this, and you, the listener, you may hear this too. Grow constantly. That means I'm not good enough. I think there's a really healthy balance. Chris, where are you at with this right now? Where staying curious is kind of like your mantra. Like I'm going to keep learning, I'm going to keep growing. But do you feel like there's some imposter syndrome? Do you feel like there's some opportunities that creep into your mind that's like, hey, I'm not good enough? Like is that where that constant learning comes from?
All the time. I always feel like, and we've talked about this before, I always feel like there is a room that is in my mind's eye that I don't belong in. And there's a table in that room that has chairs at it that I don't get to sit at. And that's why I continue to stay, I guess it's really to stay hungry, really, because at the end of the day, I have a chip on my shoulder. I've been in a position where I have put myself in positions to help other people succeed and win at the expense of my journey and my goals. And I have that chip on my shoulder in a healthy way, I should say, to where I'm going to do whatever I've got to do to make sure that when I walk into that door and I get into that room and I see that table, that my name card is on that table and everybody was always just waiting for me to get in there. I just didn't believe in myself enough to get there first. So, in order to continue to stay hungry, stay curious, I have to have that in the back of my head. It's like it almost feeds me to where like, hey, remember that time you didn't think you were good enough to be here? Guess what? You always were. You just had to work hard enough to get there. So I know some people maybe look at that as a negative as far as the imposter syndrome, but to me, it drives me because I want to do everything that I can to eliminate that. Like nobody will believe when I say this, and nobody ever does when I say this, but I'm actually a pretty shy person. I'm not a very outgoing person in a lot of situations that people would really know. Like the people that are really close to me kind of understand that, but nobody really believe me or give me that. But what I've done over my life is I have forced myself to be in situations where I have to sink or swim. And that's a lot of it for anybody. Like if there's, I know there's a person out there right now that's literally sitting there thinking, yeah, well, like it's really easy to say when X, or hey, it's easy to say that money doesn't matter when you're rich, kind of thing. Now that's not me saying that, but I'm just saying that's a conversation that's been had. But you have to have that unwavering understanding that yes, you can get there. You can do these things. You just got to believe. You
Mm.
just got to believe.
So it's funny we talk about believe. I mean, I'm just picturing Ted Lasso right now, which is amazing. But let's talk about that fear and doubt a little bit because everybody struggles with that. So something that I think is brilliant that you touched on is acknowledging your fears. Like you got to name them. You got to be like, hey, I struggle with this. It's okay. It is okay. Mental health is a real thing, and there are some tools. And one of the first tools is obviously, seeking some help. Um, but in doing so, I think the thing that I've seen through either therapy or through coaching is you got to acknowledge it. You got to acknowledge what your fears are. You got to educate yourself. I think you talk about having a seat at the table. We all have a seat at the table. It may not be the seat you want. You got to go earn that, right? I mean, you got to go earn that. So you earn it by educating yourself, doing the hard work. Start small. Who knows how big that table is? Maybe there's 20 chairs at that table. Maybe you have one of them. It's just not on the end yet. So just enjoy the fact that you have a seat at the table. Enjoy the fact that you do have a reservation in that room that you don't think you belong in. As you start small, I think you got to build a support system. We believe in relationships win, and having a support system is something that I can honestly say my business has doubled in a short period of time when I've gotten around people that push me, that I believe have my back, that I would call my support system. If you don't have a support system, step one, go find that. I think, not to get all foo-foo, but I think you have to visualize success. I think you have to visualize success in a way that you can journal, you can think about it. You can't go further than your mind. You a lot of books, a lot of personal growth books that I read, and I'm nerding out here in a little bit, but a lot of personal growth books say, you can't go further than your identity. The identity you have for yourself, and how you were raised, how you grew up, your life lessons all bring you to the point of who you think you are today. So visualizing success is, let me get out, let me travel, let me go meet people that I don't know. Once I do that, it opens my mind into, well, what else could I accomplish? I think you have to learn from failure. We talk about this a lot. Learn from failure, learn from your mistakes. Be okay. Be okay that you have mistakes. Embrace uncertainty. I think you have to practice self-awareness, compassion for others. In the thing that I find kind of uncanny is, in this journey of personal growth and development, a lot of people will start talking about themselves and the growth that they have, and then expect other people to catch up. What personal growth and compassion and self-awareness have done for me is it's allowed me to grow the grace in which I see other people through. And I think that's important to remember on our journey. Couple more things, just overcoming fear and tackling, uh, that voice inside of you, is just seek professional guidance. Coaches, mentors, friends, people that have been there. And the thing that I'm not very good at is celebrating the steps along the way. Like, I don't celebrate. I just keep moving forward, and that's something that is a constant work. I think refocusing on your why, you got to keep that in front of you all the time, and then just maintaining a growth mindset. I think if you do those things, I know that's a lot. We gave you a lot right there, but in my research of what's it going to take when you have to answer this call, I think that's the framework to it. Chris, this has been an awesome conversation, man. You've brought a lot of good stuff, but we cannot leave without talking about, what does winning at the game of life look like for you. Chris
Okay.
Myers, you're answering the call. The student is ready. The teacher has appeared. You understand the framework. You have fundamentals. You know it's going to take work. You're willing to outwork people. You've got the Kobe mindset. What does winning at the game of life look like for Chris Myers?
Making Grandpa Larry proud,
Mm.
making it obvious to anybody around me that that's where I got it from. Uh, that was always one of the biggest things I always wanted, um, is for him to see me in this position where I'm comfortable, where I'm like he was, able to do whatever I needed to do or wanted to do, really, and also take care of the people that I care about and allow them to enjoy the fruits of my labor as well. I didn't quite get there. I didn't quite get there when I needed to or wanted to. So he could see it here on earth, but I know he's looking down. I know he's seeing me, and that's winning for me, is where I can get to that point. And to be perfectly honest with you, I don't know that the journey ends. I don't know when it ends. I don't know when I can say that that's actually, um, when I've won, because I feel like, in keeping with that same mentality of helping, I don't know when that ends. As far as I've helped enough people, I've done enough good. Um, Maybe that's bad. I don't know. But for me, winning in the game of life is making it clear to everyone around me that the values that was instilled to me from Larry Simon won. Out of
Wow.
everything else in the world that was out there, that's what won.
If you believe what we do that relationships win, I don't believe outcomes win. Trust me, I love to win, but I hate to lose more than I love to win. I don't believe outcomes are the goal. I believe relationships win. And and Chris, if I can just affirm you for a second, answering the call that's inside of you, you're already making Larry proud.
Thank you. Thank you.
The kids say, give this man his flowers. Chris, Chris, I'm gonna give you some flowers today for being on this podcast, for being a longtime listener, being a big supporter. There's people in my life that shoot me a text after some episodes and like, "Hey, that was a good one. I really appreciated that." I need friends to say, "Hey, that was a bad episode too. You suck." Brad, you got to keep working on your game, man. You got to keep, falling in love with practice. But you do a great job of supporting, and I'm gonna send you some flowers for that. I mean, you affirm me that the work that I'm doing here on this podcast is making a difference, and so I appreciate that. But since the kids get to say them, why don't you take some turn? Why don't you take a turn here? Who's someone in your life you want to send some flowers to? We believe relationships win, and you're going to send some flowers to somebody who has been instrumental in your life.
Well, as I said before, I don't get to be in this position without the help of a lot of people in my life. I've been in a lot of different positions, a lot of different places. So I've got a few people that I want to get through because I want to make sure that, I know that you create this as legacy content. So as legacy content, I want this to be something that survives on to people know they know that I appreciate them. So first and foremost, and this is obviously in no particular order aside from this first one, but my wife, Catherine, she has been the biggest supporter of me. She has been the person that says, go out and go get it. So shout out to Chantel Smith. She,
Go
her
get it.
mentality, go get it. She's been the one that's helped me doing that. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes I really suck as a husband, right? Like I don't get it right all the time, but she makes me want to get it right as much as I possibly can. And for that, I can't thank her enough because that's, I'm not here if it's not for her. Honestly, I was not going to be the person that I am today if I didn't want to be that person for her. So, Catherine, love you. Thank you. Going on down the list, Grandpa Larry, of course, for all the lessons, all the opportunities, all the love, all the pride he had in me. Theo Smith, Miles Meyer, for two people in my life who may or may not know it, but always pushed me to be a better person and always set that bar just a little higher for me. Every time I thought I would get to a level that I could feel like I was comparable to them, either with definitely not art. I can't do this. But in terms of being the human being that Theo is, like I always wanted to get to that level. And then Miles in the video editing side of things, I always wanted to get to their level. And then once I did, they would do this. And it was like, oh, okay, well, I gotta go there now. So they always gave me the next goal. Brock Roush from my old position there at Hallmark. I can't say enough about the guy. He was always been a big supporter of mine. And he also was the person who probably unknowingly helped spark the change for me to pursue this career more than anybody else because he would always tell me that I would be great at it. So my brother Dustin for always pushing me and always being that big brother even if I didn't want it. My mother, my father for being the two most amazing parents that I could have ever asked for and didn't deserve. Aquarius Shakur, call him Q, is my man. He took me in. I didn't have a place to stay. He gave me a place to stay. He taught me about diligence and he taught me about what it takes to work hard and get to where you got to go. Richard Grip was the first person that gave me an opportunity in marketing. Without him, I don't get out of the factories that I was in. So thank you to him. And then the last two are special for this particular episode. Doug Noll. So he taught me a lesson that, again, I did not realize was an important lesson until way later on in life. In my bio, I think I wrote to you, I said I was the 4-time best defensive player at Spring Arbor Cougar basketball camp, which really quick here. Can I get a Cougar clap on 3? 1, 2, 3.
Love it.
Anyway, so so no, the story the lesson that he taught me was that I was the 4-time. I really am the 3-time because I would have been 4 times consecutively. And I'm not going to get into a lot of details, but I got in trouble at his camp. And he told me, actually, you remember Coach Ricks?
Oh yeah.
So Coach Ricks came down after I got in trouble and said, "Hey, Coach said you can either have all the medals and go home tonight, or you can stay, get no recognition, and help your team win the tournament." And I stayed. And I never realized how important that was until way later on in life to understand that it doesn't matter what you get. If you can't help your team win, what did you actually do? And so that lesson that he gave to me as as an adult now, as a man, as a father, like was bigger than anything bigger than anything I knew I
Wow.
was going to get, So that was huge. And then lastly, I've been listening to the podcast for a long time, and I don't know that it's happened yet, but you, Brad, for being the mentor that you didn't think that you were to me, for being the person that I always wanted to meet when I was younger. Going back to the first time I met you at Spring Arbor, man, we were listening to Enigma in your room, and we thought we were that was it. Like we had the juice. You gave me pieces of shattered backboard, and I thought you were the coolest dude. And ever since then, man, I've always wanted to know you. Once we got older, and I realized that you also live in Fort Wayne, after your playing career was over, you were a person that I always wanted to reconnect with and become friends with. And I think I told you this before, but I've always looked up to you, man. So thank you for being that person, and thank you for the opportunity to get on here and uh, and say the things that I've said. I still don't believe that I actually belong on this list, but now I'm an alumni, and you can't stop me. So I'm
Can't
coming back
stop.
to the alumni game,
I
which
love
they
it.
probably won't let us be on the same team again because the old man practices, they kept us off the same team after we kept dominating everybody. But hey, what can two burn kids do?
Hey, this is my podcast, and if somebody who's the defensive player of the year wants to be on my team, that's a yes every day, every day.
I love it.
Uh,
I love it.
so we believe relationships win, and I appreciate you bringing the flower truck and handing out all those flowers and accolades, and I hope you share this with everybody you named on there, and specifically make sure that they hear the end of this, but the middle of this, the beginning of this. One of the things that I want to challenge you with right now, and you, the listener, as well as you, Chris, is Larry's not seeing the ripple effects. And I just believe, like a pebble on a pond, we are all the pebbles, and the ripple effects are going to continue to go on. How big a ripple effects do you want your life to be? That's really the question. And when you have to answer the call, when you have to change careers, when you have to do something that's uncomfortable, there's a bigger purpose for it. Way to answer that call, Chris. Best of luck to you, man. I know you're going to do big things, and I know because of the fundamentals, man. I know because you fall in love with practice, and you already know what winning looks like. So keep it up. For you, listener, man, what a great show. If you know somebody going through a transition, if you know somebody who needs to answer the call or has been answering a call in their life, send this to them. Rate us, review us, share this episode with a friend, because I believe, and I hope you just know it's not words on a podcast, that relationships do win. I've known this man, Chris, for a long time. We went in and out of touch and back into touch now, and my life is better because of it. So, Chris, thanks for being a guest today on Student of the Game.
Thanks, brother. Hey, we ain't done yet.
All right. That's a wrap.